Hearing none, we'll move on to number 3, approval of the meeting. The first one is the regular meeting dated May 10th. Need a motion to accept those.
I'll move to accept both of those meeting dates.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Votes ordered. The next one is the approval for the public hearing and special meeting on May 24th, 2023. Any motion to accept that one? Mr. Chuckton?
I should motion to approve minutes special meeting, May 24, 2023.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Uh, 4A, Superintendent's Report, Danielle and Garrett.
Good afternoon. Okay, so for the month of May, we've got our numbers here, start from the top and just work our way through. Average daily flow, 2.2 million gallons per day. That's down quite a bit from.
Is that May or June? You have June on here.
Well, this is, I'm sorry, it is June, correction. That's for the period of June 2023. My apologies. So the 2.2 million gallons per day, that's down from the month before. We hadn't had quite as much rain. We had a few rain events in April and May that were quick 3 or 4 inch rainfall events, and that wreaked havoc on our system, but we're a little bit better now. Peak flow, 6.0 million gallons per day. Influent VOD, 299 milligrams per liter, which is quite a bit over our design. Influent TSS, 468 milligrams per liter, also more than double our design. Influent total nitrogen.
What you said, I thought you said things were getting better.
Well, despite all of these high numbers, we're treating it fairly decently for the amount we're getting in. So,
Okay.
despite them being high, we're treating it for now. Influent total nitrogen, 49.2 milligrams per liter.
So let me ask a question.
Sure.
Basically for everybody. So when you, at the outfall is the important part of this calculation, correct?
Yes. Yes, so for VOD and TSS at the outfall, so these influent numbers are quite high. And the effluent for those are, we're doing pretty well. As we get to the bottom of this report, you'll see that we've had a 92% removal efficiency, which is
Okay, right.
wonderful.
Yeah.
The same cannot be said for our nitrogen. We still have very high nitrogen. It's high coming in, higher than our design, and it's still high going out. And that's the kind of the number that the DEP has, that nitrogen credit trading program where we either pay out or pay in. So, that's suffering a little bit. The nitrogen's hard to remove when it's that high coming in.
Okay.
So that TKN number, influent TKN, 48.3, also, as you can see, quite high from what our design shows for 32. Our loadings, our BOD loadings, these are now all in pounds per day, 5,486 pounds per day. That's right around our design of 5,505. Influent suspended solids, you can see, is very high, 8,587 pounds per day. Our design says we should be more like 5,400. Influent TKN, 886 pounds per day. Influent total nitrogen, 903 pounds per day. So as far as compliance, our effluent total nitrogen is still on the high side, 10.2 milligrams per liter, but it's down a lot. We've made a lot of progress with our nitrogen removal. Effluent BOD, 24 milligrams per liter, so that is within our permit. Effluent TSS at 34 milligrams per liter, that's a monthly number. It is higher than what our permit allows, but it is significantly lower than it was in the previous months. So we're getting there. Removal efficiency for both VOD and TSS is 92%, and we're required to have 85%. So we did very well there.
So in the end, when you go to the outfall, that's what counts.
The outfall is what counts. So the nitrogen needs to be improved, and that TSS that we've got coming in is we're treating it, but we are higher than we should be. I mean, we should be seeing single digit outfall numbers and we're in the 20s and 30s, but that's because, you know, it's well above our design. So we're getting it under our permit, but we're not getting it down to where we could if we were operating normally. We're just receiving so much in the collection system.
How much does, I know we've talked about this probably several times, even years ago, the scum and the scum rakes.
That absolutely needs to be improved. I mean, I would say as a priority. The only way we can ensure trapping the scum is if we are physically on site. We have to open that scum trough manually and wait for a decant and then kind of guide the scum into the scum trough. And that's the only time it can happen. It won't happen through the night or while we're not manned.
Hey, Matt, did you put this on our priority list, the scum rakes?
Yeah, I think we did.
Okay,
Anyway, it's a recent addition, but yeah, we were focusing on the SBR tanks, not the chlorine contact chamber. But yeah, that kind of, I think that works into a bigger thought process of how you would handle it.
okay.
Okay, so our effluent total nitrogen was 164 pounds per day. That's about half of what we were the month before. So although it's still over the permit of 106, it's a lot better than the 300 and change we were last month. Our monthly sludge that we trucked out was 5.4 dry tons, and we have got all 4 SPRs in operation. And just to go through staffing, so right now, myself, superintendent, we've got Bill Marcusio as the grade 3 plant operator. Ed DeTula is retired officially as of August 2nd, so he's running out his vacation time and is not actively working. Garrett, he's our grade 2 operator. He's always present. Jason Convertito as well, our grade 1, and Brian Sortel at this time he is on short-term disability until it's possibly December. He's not actively at work. We haven't had any accidents in 52 months. No first aid cases or chemical consumables. So our polymer, 65 gallons per month. I'm going to skip over sodium hydroxide for a moment. Neutralize, 20 gallons per month. Foam free, 140 gallons per month. And this last one, our sodium hypochlorite, 3,158 gallons per month because we are in disinfection seasons. We started June 1st. All of these are pretty normal numbers. I skipped over sodium hydroxide because that's a new one. We haven't been using sodium hydroxide. It's been used many years ago. And now we're using it again. And we use very, very little, I mean, 40 gallons per month. It's not a very expensive chemical. It is very beneficial to our process though.
Okay, so let's go back to the first page. Let's forget the chemicals for a minute and consumables. So you got a lot of data here that's over design limits, quite a few of them, and you can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items over. What are we going to do now that we got? What are we going to do to start trying to get these numbers down? And what do you need from us?
This is a couple of things. It's what's coming in from the collection system. Obviously, we can only control so much of that, but you know, whatever we could do I&I wise is certainly going to help us. Nitrogen, I mean, we do get a lot of nitrogen from inflow, so it's possible that you know, improving the collection side of things could help that. But this might be something where we really need to start looking at some facilities upgrades, the facility upgrades. You know, hydraulically speaking, we're well under design. You know, we're at about half of our design hydraulically, but all of the loadings and the solids are just so high. So I really think this warrants a study.
Okay.
I believe that we should really have a study, not just a flow study, but an actual plant loadings study to see where we can improve. We can only speculate where this is all coming from. I mean, we've got so much growth in town, it's part of it. And we're growing every day, so the numbers aren't going to get better, you know?
Are you think you guys are at the max of what you guys, what you can do without having to study and trying to do, doing this loading study? Is there any, I'm gonna guess, after talking to you for the past couple of months, you guys have obviously done a great job, but it's never gonna stop, and it's not gonna get better until we do, it sounds like, to do a loading study. So it needs to be one of the first things we need to do.
I agree with that.
Okay,
Yes, we definitely, I don't think that there's nothing that we can do on site to make the plant operate above and beyond its capability, right? We can only make it work the best we can. I mean, it's already working better than expected as far as handling some of these loadings. But I don't know how much more we can squeeze out of it. And
Okay.
and really, the outfall numbers could be so much better. I mean, we could be doing a much better job. We're just like traveling right on the cusp of being over our permit on our numbers. We don't want to live there because that's scary when you're always possibly gonna blow a permit number. We want to be, I mean, the plant was designed at the time for the loadings and the flows to be able to get total suspended solids, for example, into this like below 15 into the single digits. And we don't hit that. We don't hit that at all.
I gotta send Ann an email. You and I talked about that last week. That number that I got goes to DEP, but they're still remote, so I gotta send her an email.
Yeah, I don't have a direct number for her or an extension.
Now I'll send her an email, see if she'll call me.
So yes, I think we definitely have to start looking at study and plan for an upgrade.
All right, so on to staffing. So you got Ed, who's retired, and you got Brian on short-term disability. You're operating with 4 people.
Right.
If I recall, DEP requires us to have 6 people or 7 people on
8
board.
people.
8 people. So that's another thing I gotta kind of like just, maybe you and I have a call with Ann. So what are you doing to get at least 1 or 2 more here? Have you
Okay.
reached out to,
So I reached out to Catherine Christopher, who is our former HR director. She's recently resigned. She did work up some job postings. But that-
Because of you.
Maybe, I'm not sure. I hope not. I pushed her to a limit, right? So she did work up 2 plant operator position postings. And they are internal postings at this time, I believe until Friday. And I don't think there have been any applicants from the inside. There are people from the outside, I think, that would apply. So once it
can I
gets.
apply?
Sure.
I don't want to go work down there.
Sure you do, fun. No, so,
All right, so you got 2 postings out and what
For
are,
operators.
what's for operators? So what are we gonna? So if you don't get anybody in-house, what's the next step? Then you're gonna publicize it
so now it goes.
publicly, okay?
Correct. And then when Ed Deptula is officially off the books after August 2nd, that job position can be posted as well for another operator.
Yeah, but I don't understand that. And look, I don't know city politics or all that city stuff, but if he's retired, just because he is still a city employee because he's taken up all of his vacation, which is fine, that's how it works, and I wish I had that opportunity. As far as I'm concerned, he's not an operator, and the
Right.
position's open.
Right,
Now, it's not open until August.
I believe this is union stuff. I was told that we cannot post until he's officially off the books. So I'm just kind of.
That's why I'm not a fan of unions. All right, all right.
Okay, let's see, okay, so our training for the month of June was lawnmower safety. And, I skipped over that, but then, yes, we went through the chemical consumables with sodium hydroxide being the new chemical, but the new old chemical, brought that back around. And that helps with nitrogen removal. We need a certain amount of alkalinity for nitrogen removal, and this basically raises the alkalinity. Our alkalinity is abysmal coming into the plant, so we needed to increase it, and that's the only real way to get it done. Noise complaints, we haven't had any, and we've been 128 noise-free months. Same with odors, no odor complaints with 58 months of.
So we can have that discussion when Talway comes up.
The pump station grease removal, we didn't have our June meeting, so we didn't report for May, but May there was, grease removal performed. We didn't really have a road person, a pump station person working. Ed had already put in for his retirement, and for safety reasons, we don't like to send one person out on the road all the time. Especially when they're in confined spaces, that's not a wise idea at all. And then, but for the month of June, we had 530 pounds removed of grease, and
That was over a 60-day period.
that was over a 30-day period. That was just the month of June.
June,
Nothing was actually removed in, well,
that's what I'm saying.
nothing was reported removed in May. We don't, the records are unclear for May, I think just because of the transition period, there wasn't anything really documented. It was. So we skipped May and, but whether there was any actual grease removed, that's unclear. But I believe that was a month worth of grease. Could have been. Going forward, it'll be 1 month at a time. Preventative maintenance, we do our weekly SBR maintenance, we maintain our bar screens and band screens, clean our filters, lube all the pumps, the the grit collection system, plant water system, and our rotary drum thickener. So that's done mostly weekly and or monthly, all that maintenance. We also did test our generator. I forgot to add that here, but our generator has been tested under load, and everything works correctly, especially with storm season coming. We want to make sure we're prepared. And corrective maintenance, the plant water pump needed to be removed for repair. We rewired the 24-hour effluent auto sampler, so it would be flow paced. That's required by the DEP. It had not been flow paced for some time, so that is now working correctly and according to the permit. We replaced a parasolic tubing with a defoamer, and we repaired the pump fault connections at the River Road pump station. Now that defoamer, I just want to say a word about the defoamer. We did have one complaint this month of foaming at our outfall. We do add a defoamer at every decant. It starts about a minute before the decant.
Yeah, did that finally go away? I mean,
I
the
had a
complaint
meeting.
person,
So that person, I haven't heard anything from him or from Save the Sound. I have had a meeting with DEP, and they are very happy with the efforts that we're making to reduce the foam. And some of this, I mean, we've taken pictures throughout this past couple of weeks, and it looks foamy and terrible out there at times when we haven't even decanted for well over an hour. It's just something coming from up the river that.
yes, so the guy that gave the complaint is looking to have post a complaint because he's a part of, that old system that you see something that's, and it's, see, we get that all the time. It's the plant's fault. It's the plant's fault. It's always the plant's fault.
Right, and there's definitely something else happening out there. I mean, it looks terrible when we haven't, upriver from us. I mean, upriver from the outfall, it's not us. So they did suggest a few things. They want us to clean around our outfall zone of influence area. Just there's branches and dead stuff there that's collecting things. They want that to get cleaned. And they also want us to put up a sign that kind of says something like treated sewage outfall. For more information, dial our number, and if it's an emergency, if they do call the plant, then they can get additional information on how to file a complaint if there's a problem. But what we're hoping to do is have people call us, not everybody else.
I don't know if I would have a sign say treated sewage outfall. I would use another word instead of the word sewage, treated.
We
Thought about
Waste.
effluent, but they wouldn't know what effluent means.
It doesn't matter. The people that are the guy that gave the complaint knows what it is. So I would call it something else. I wouldn't use the word sewage out. You're out there kayaking, which this knucklehead was doing. And, he knows what it is. And if the general public is not going to say anything, it's the people that know what's out there. So I wouldn't call it sewage. Because everybody's gonna see it, oh, look at the sewage, it's not, I would call it something, in my opinion, Danielle, Garrett, I would call it something different, I would call it something else. And who cares, I don't wanna say, look, don't take it the wrong way, the public, who cares what the public thinks that word means? I would use something else, I would not use the word sewage.
Okay.
That's my opinion, you guys can,
Yeah.
it's your
Well,
plant, but
It's, we didn't have the sign made yet. We're just kind of rolling it around. There are pre-made signs that say, sewage outfall, and we really didn't like that because that doesn't even imply that it's treated. That just kind of implies.
I don't
that
like
it's
the
raw
word sewage being out there personally.
Okay, well, we can come up with something.
Just a discharge.
Yeah, discharge.
Treated discharge or something.
Plant discharge or something like that.
Wastewater.
City discharge.
City wastewater discharge. Wastewater is better than the word sewage.
Okay, I agree. That's fine.
I mean, people are looking at,
I'll have to get.
All right, so let's
I have to
move-
get a longer sign now though, because wastewater is a really long word. I'm just.
treated
Call it
wastewater,
Pollution.
huh?
I like using the word pollution too. It's pollution,
Nah,
like the name of the,
nah, that's just as bad as the word sewage.
yeah,
Treated discharge.
Treated discharge,
That's good.
treated pollution.
no, no.
Yeah, what is a long word, right? Treated discharge, I like that. Okay, so that's what we're working on. We're gonna see what we can do about hiring somebody to come out and clean by the outfall. So it's a pretty shallow area, so anything that is sticking up as far as branches and whatnot, it does just affects everything. But right now, we have such high flows, you can't even see it. It's just ripping out there. It's fast moving water and nothing's getting caught, but first week of July, we had nothing to get dry.
All right, so the two things that we need to work on is a loading study and trying to figure out how to get more people to plant. That DEP requires us to have,
Right,
okay?
they require us to operate according to our O&M manual, and the O&M manual suggests that we have a minimum of 8 people.
I won't tell you the words I want to use, but from other discussions how I feel. All right, anything else? Any other questions for Danielle or Garrett?
Thank you.
Thanks, that's a nice, nicely done.
Thank you.
5A, Talalay Global Wastewater. Talalay Global Discharge, we won't use the word wastewater discharge, Talalay Global Discharge. Sudeep, you want to come up, Matt? So Danielle, do you want to open up with Sudeep? Sudeep, you can come on up over here.
Okay. So somebody left the phone there.
It's recorded.
Oh. Who, you want to open this up, Matt or Danielle? Matt, why don't you open this up? You can sit down here too. We're all family here, Matt.
It's the Olive Garden.
Yeah.
So the Callaway Global, I don't really want to call it an issue, but permitting effort has been going on for gosh, for a year and a half, almost 2 years.
More than 2 years.
Yeah, and what they're trying to get permitted is a air scrubber discharge for to remove ammonia from an air discharge as part of a small part of their process of manufacturing. It's not the main industrial discharge for the mattress manufacturing, that's stored separately. This is just a very, very distinct air discharge for ammonia that we've been looking at different ways to permit this through the DEP as a industrial discharge for a very long time, and the process has evolved quite a bit from the initial effort. Right now, we're looking at basically a very specific discharge permit for just this source, but then kind of talking through the issue. The discharge has been offline since January. There haven't been any odor complaints that we know about within that time. So then it kind of brings up the question, do we need an air scrubber? Or should we have the air scrubber ready to go for the, maybe the peak months when people are outside to prevent discharges? But there's been a lot of meetings going back and forth, talking about, the effect of this ammonia is a form of nitrogen, and the loading is highly variable. We've seen some very low numbers. We also see some incredibly high numbers. And initially, what kind of got our attention, was like, we're going to add more than 10 pounds of nitrogen per day that would end up down at the plant, which the plant's already operating above its nutrient removal capacity now. So there's that concern, well, what's going to happen when we get that higher nutrient loading? But then it's not always, come to find out, talking with Sudeep, it's not always this really high nitrogen loading. It's incredibly variable based on the source product that they're using, the natural latex. So we've had a lot of discussions, and finally it's kind of come to the point, it's like, why don't we have the applicant come in? We can talk about it at the WPCA and try to resolve the issue and figure out what makes sense for Tallaway Global.
All right, so I think make it clear that we understand. And I was talking to Sudeep beforehand, that maybe I'll say we were probably a little bit aggressive on it, thinking it was coming from you guys, but maybe after, and I'll let Danielle and Bill talk. Maybe it's not as bad as we had anticipated, that maybe it's not totally you guys, and you guys were offline since January. So, we're looking to make sure that this works for you and for us also. And I don't think it's a big deal anymore.
Okay.
It's not as big of a deal as it might have been put out here earlier in meeting minutes in April. You don't have to read them all back. We know what's in there.
Yeah.
So we're just looking to satisfy DEP. And I think you guys have gone the limit to do it. But my only comment was, when I was talking to Danielle, is that, okay, so we know you guys haven't had any odor complaints. We're thinking that maybe the nitrogen is not, it's everywhere. It's not necessarily from you guys. And we had to figure that out. And as we talked earlier, we had to figure that out based on, we need to do a study. Okay, so that's the easier part for you guys. My comment is, and then I'm gonna let Bill and Danielle talk, is my comment is, if you have the scrubber there, why did you guys disconnect it? And why can't you, Bill's telling me it's not that easy. Why can't you put the valves back in and the missing pipe sections of pipe and put it back in? So it's there. So we can say to a city resident or the DEP, it's back up and running. It's all ready to go. It's no big deal. So you guys can turn it on at will, or we talked about ways to have it, available. So Danielle, and you guys want to talk about what you found, kind of.
Cause then, are you gonna put that scrubber back in place and have it like a fall back on?
That's the hope, yes. So the exhaust from the process, from the mold room that we have, currently we are treating it with a odor suppressant or a scent, if you want to call it. So what happens is, the exhaust was going to the scrubber. We split that pipe in two. We capped off the scrubber for now until this issue is resolved. And we are adding a scent or a perfume, if you want to call it, to that, mask the odor. And we have moved it away from the residence to the other side of the plant. Now that system is running, and what if it goes down for whatever reason? It's not operational. We want to have the scrubber as a backup. Or all of a sudden the drum of chemical that's used triples the price. Nowadays everything is, so we want some sort of a backup available to treat so the treatment is required regardless. Right now we are just doing an air treatment, but the water treatment, we want to have that option available. So that's one thing. And according to all the stuff, the memo that we prepared from reviewing all the past, we don't think that that discharge is causing any issues to the plant. And, we would want to have that option to discharge without any surcharges, imposed on us. That's our intent of coming to the meeting today.
Mhm.
So when we went to visit with Sudeep and Tom, Bill and I went last week. The first thing that I would like to say is that we appreciate how much care you've taken to be very transparent in exactly what you're doing there. We got a full tour of the facility. They even provided a map of exactly what discharges go where, how many gallons per day, flow, where they have a sample point, where they do monitoring. I mean, we couldn't ask for anything better. And when I did do the math based on the quarterly numbers of in milligrams per liter and the flow rates, the math came out to between 1 pound and 56 pounds. And that's the absolute minimum and the absolute maximum pounds
At their
per day
facility?
of nitrogen if they're running the scrubber. So when we said like it's 10 pounds per day, most of the time, first of all, you haven't been running at all.
Yeah.
And our nitrogen numbers are still high. And a lot of the times it's probably going to be closer to single digits in pounds, not as high. It's just that the material, from what I understand, that you use is very highly variable in the amount of ammonia that it gases off right? So each batch can be completely different from another. But just looking at the very small amounts of flow, and seeing how that exhaust has been moved to the other side of the facility, and that's been that way for several months, and they've received no complaints. We've had no odor complaints. It seems as though that's working. That process that they've got for exhausting is working. And I do like the idea of having a backup plan, though. That would be nice. And then to know, hey, we are gonna go to scrubber mode, just to have the ability to know that, with a heads up, so we know what to expect.
Yeah, and the frequency of complaints have reduced. It's not that we have had no complaints. So that was, I think, when we mentioned, we had 2 complaints, Tom, we have had 2 complaints, one in March, one in April.
Do they call you directly and complain to you guys directly?
Yes,
Okay.
it was, I did go back and check some records and what that was just this morning, but we had one, it was March and April. Since we had, did this now. That's all I can tell you at this point in time. It's been quiet since that time.
It comes to. So, yeah, in the last couple of months, there was no complaint, but since January, we have had complaints. So frequency has reduced, but that odor once in a while has always been an issue, right? For Callaway. And we are doing whatever we can. Every time we are trying to contact new vendors, find, if technology has changed, if something better is available, we are always on the lookout for that. We want to be good neighbors and good citizens.
So what about monitoring? Danielle and I had talked at length about this and about, what are we gonna ask you guys to help us do? And Danielle, and correct me if I'm wrong, we had talked about you guys providing data to Danielle at the plant for monthly monitoring and having a wet well possibly, or, I don't think we were suggesting a wet well, but a way for you to send any of your data over to Danielle once a month or however often you want it to be. So we kind of have an idea. I think what's going to happen, first of all, we have to report back to the EP, as you know.
Yeah.
And we have to let them know what we're going to ask you guys to do. What about monitoring a wet well, having a wet well, or sending samples over once a month? Danielle, what else were you and I talking about?
Well, so one thing is they do have a sample point right after their scrubber tanks. There's 200-gallon scrubber tanks, and there's a sample point right there. And I think it would be pretty convenient that when it's running, that you would take either, I was thinking more like a weekly, because it's so variable. Having it monthly, I mean, what if they get a huge hit? Or, I think it would just be a better picture if it's running, if you had like a weekly sample, then we can work out the logistics as to who would test that. I mean, we're not gonna require you to have like an online analyzer. We could just take a liquid sample and test it. I can even test in-house. I mean, these are things that we can work out. It's not an expensive test. It could be sent to a third-party lab. I think it costs something like $8 or $12 to do an ammonia test. So a weekly sampling frequency would make me happy.
So there's two things to that. The permit that DEP would issue, in this case, an individual wastewater discharge permit. The federal pretreatment regulations do not require any monitoring for nitrogen. The only thing of concern for them in this case, for this operation, is zinc. So they would have zinc and a couple other parameters that the federal pretreatment standard require. So the DEP might issue that permit. Now, if we can tell, Shelton can send us a letter so we don't mess the two things up, because, the DEP permit, if something, they want to add something to it, then it has to be, Shelton would have the obligation to prove why, right? So if we have a separate arrangement where, okay, whenever we run the scrubber, we'll sample it on a weekly basis and give you the data. And for whatever reason, it's affecting the plant, our data from last several years show that it has no impact on the plant. But if you do see impact, then we can revisit the issue at that time.
So how do you,
Well, I would say, I'm sorry.
no, good.
I mean, this is more like, not to assess some sort of fee or something. That isn't the reason that I'm
Right.
suggesting the sampling.
Yeah.
It's for my knowledge. That way, when,
Yeah.
and that is, and that might not be something the DEP requires, but I would like to know that information. And like I said, it's not even a cost that I would necessarily even impose on you for the testing. It would be literally filling a bottle of sample and getting it to us, whether we pick it up or you drop it off. I have the ability to test ammonia in-house.
Yeah.
So, that's all I'm asking is, so we have the knowledge. So if we're seeing spikes, we could say, is there a correlation or not?
Yeah.
So my question then is, with sampling, I mean, we go to the doctor and I got to do a urine sample. I go into the bathroom and then I open up the little door and I give them so how does it, and look, I'm not insinuating anything, but how is it a closed sampling system that you guys can't just mix your own concoction? How does that work?
We can collect the sample. It's like opening a tap and just getting a.
But how do I know the sample you're collecting is untainted? I mean,
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
So I handle several DEP permits, so we have a professional go in and collect a sample. That's what we do for a living, we collect.
You got to admit, I'm asking a legitimate question.
Yeah,
You got to admit it, because let's face it. I mean, as good as you guys might be, and I'm asking a question because down the road, somebody's gonna say, well, they would just open a little spigot and they put it into a little vial and they capped and they brought it over to Danielle. I'm not insinuating anything bad is happening from you guys, but I'm just asking a legitimate question is, in my opinion, can it be a closed system somehow that you guys collect the sample instead of opening a spigot? You tell me yes or no. And then,
well, it's a flow through system. It cannot be a closed system. It's water the fumes go in one way and come out the other way, and the water is sprayed on it. Now, our guys would sign the chain of custody, and we all have licenses to worry about. So it's not that we are going to.
well, that's a fair way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens is then, reverse it and it goes to, to a third party to get the test. I mean, like you says, it's inexpensive enough, and then there's no question if there's, any concerns with accuracy of not to take away any accuracies of what the, city's checking, just keep it all neutral. It doesn't matter.
If the city wants to come and grab a
They
sample,
want to grab a sample, that's fine.
that's fine too, yeah. There's nothing to hide there.
No.
And as we showed during our tour, we have nothing.
I'm not suggesting there is, but it's just, if somebody comes and asks us, DEP's, and I'm sure they have an answer. Somebody else, we get somebody complained, the guy's in the kayak 2 weeks ago and says, well, look at all the foam. Well, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? It's the guy's blowing it out of proportion.
We are okay, whenever we run the scrubber as a backup, we can collect the sample. The city is welcome to come and collect their own sample at the same time.
So why don't we, and Danielle, you tell me, let's suggest that for once a week for 3 months, you want it 4 months, you want to monitor it and. Is that,
Sure, but also you're not, I mean, are you anticipating on running the scrubber anytime?
Not today.
You know what I
Not-
mean? Like, that's my question is when is the scrubber, are we asking them to run it on purpose for the point of monitoring it or, you know, because right now it's not running.
No, our next step was, and as we, it said, is that, we wanted to, first attend this meeting, kind of, set, as was indicated, correct some of the inaccuracies from the April minutes, get that squared away that everyone seems to be, is in agreement with.
yeah.
And then, one of the other comments I just want to make is that, it came up in the intro, is that when we did the disconnect, and I'm probably very conservative, is that we wanted to make sure that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that it was disconnected. So that's why we broke the junctions, if you want to say, and it's not difficult to put the stuff, back together again, but we wanted to make sure that there was no doubt, to your point, anyone's mind that it is disabled, and it's not gonna push a button to restart it again or take a lockout tag off. Okay, it's not that easy to do, so we wanted to verify. What we also did, as Sandeep indicated, is that we relocated, the exhaust away from the current location because, and that was another expense that we had to incur, obviously, so that we can at least reduce, if you want to say, the risk factor of odor complaints, at least pertaining to that, so that was done as well.
When did you do that?
Yeah, same question.
Yeah.
After April, I think.
That's
It
an
went-
okay,
yeah,
so it was,
it was
you think it was after?
I
your
think it
April
was after,
complaint?
I think it was after April.
Was it?
Yeah,
Kind of open.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So it took a little bit to get it completed. I can get the exact date from records, but,
So the March and April complaints, the two complaints you had were when the exhaust was located closer to those condominiums. You would say, or is that not accurate?
But I want to add one more thing to that, is the river being right next to the plant, the wind direction changes a lot. Because, based on the weather and different times of the day, it's not that it's blowing from south to north, and it always stays like that. And there is hills around it.
we're in a hole.
So they're basically, they're in a hole there. So
We're in a deeper hole than you are. We're down lower.
so we are trying to do everything we can but sometimes just the wind doesn't support us and it's blowing in the wrong direction, even though it's a little farther now. So I want to make sure that,
You also have the wind flags that you check too.
yeah,
Right, we have wind flags, and that's just the reason why we put those up, correct, and we had shown you that, is that we can, anytime during the day, in fact, and I'll say this, is I can look at the rear of the building, and look at the wind direction of that, of one of the flags, go to the front of the building where it is, and it can go somewhere else, or look at the US flag, and it's going in a different direction. Just prevailing from the river, from the ocean, we get a lot of that coming up. It's amazing.
So would you be willing to have the scrubber running, let's say the beginning of August? And then that way they can see for a couple months what an average TKN number would be over, based on a weekly sample? Does that make sense?
We want to get the results of this, and what we would like to do, with all due respect, is that after we convene with this session, is that I might want to go back and talk to, obviously, Fuss and O'Neill, but also talk to our management team, at Talaway Global, to decide what our next steps was. As I said, indicated from my end of it here, is that we wanted to make sure that one, the record was straight. Number two is that there was, at that time, there was discussion on surcharges, and if the permit was to go forward, that there would be, we're requesting, obviously, with due respect, of no surcharges, to be charged for us doing this.
It's probably hard to say that until we know exactly
Right.
until we do
Right.
these tests. We're willing to work with you guys and figure that out. And if 3 or 4 months from now, it is in fact you, you guys are
Right.
trying to prove it's not, which,
Right.
you know, then the surcharges are not the question. The question is, let's get some action items on here so we can figure out what exactly we think we're gonna ask you to do. I don't, in my opinion, don't see surcharges being a problem. But again, we need to get that, I think we need to get the scrubber up. Let's get 2 or 3 months worth of data, if that's enough, and then we can take it from there. I mean, we're not gonna sit here and make any judgments right now,
Right.
as you know.
Well, nor I as far as
Right.
making decisions or commitment to start it back up
Right.
again until we.
So if we're gonna ask for some action items right now, and I'll say action items for you guys and then action items for us, I think really if I were to do a list, action item was, can you get the scrubber up and running? You know, relatively easy, and I'm not gonna tell you, you know, if you tell me it's $20,000, I'm gonna say, well, you know,
We can get the scrubber up and running. Yeah, when you say relatively easy, yes, we can get the scrubber running in some period of time, okay, based on a target date, yes.
Tom, can
Whether or
I,
not we have to do it is the other, you know, decision that we're gonna make, you know, from us.
well,
Our side of it.
then you're saying you're gonna make a decision whether you're gonna do that or not. Then how do we reply
Right.
back to DEP?
Right,
We're gonna reply back to DEP that you guys aren't helping us. That's an easy part on our end. We
Sure.
reply to DEP. So all we're asking you is to consider it and let us know what you think about bringing it back online.
okay,
yeah, and there's one issue with that is DEP wants us to permit this discharge, right? And the permit has been in their on their desk for 2 years now. So now we start the discharge again. Now we told DEP we seized it, and we started again. Now DEP saying, oh, you're discharging, we are not even, so the three parties need to work in sync
Mhm.
rather than separate of each other. The management at Callaway, as Tom indicated, is very conservative. Now they don't want to start a discharge and not have a permit for it. So if you want to let the DEP process go through, and then once we start discharging, we will do our nitrogen sampling as you want us to do. And based on the data, we can, you know, reconvene or just, you know, meet with the WPCF and see, you know.
So we would have to notify DEP that this is right, you tell me, right?
So there's two options. One option would be that out of this meeting, we have another conference call with DEP. Said, yeah, we had a meeting at the WPCA. You can watch it on YouTube if you want. But we had some action items coming out of this, but one of them is we wanted to run the scrubber on a trial basis for 3 months before we issue the permit. The city's okay with that. Callaway, after they got approval from the rest of the organization, was okay with that. We just want to make sure DEP is okay with that, since the two parties already agreed to try that. So DEP has another suggestion, which is let's push through the DEP permit now. And then any requirements that the city has would be between Callaway and the city directly. And then that way it doesn't have to get written into the permit, which when EPA reviews requirements, like EPA would never approve a requirement that we say we require pre-treatment, because there's no precedent for it.
Correct. So the DEP is the enforcement authority, but EPA is also involved, and they'll say, okay, why are you having a limit? Because the limit can be enforced only if you follow our protocol. So I think, in my opinion, it would be best if we tell DEP, hey, continue with your permit, and we will deal directly with Callaway with the nitrogen issue. As we are discussing right now, is we start the scrubber, we sample it on a weekly basis for a couple of months. If the plant sees no impact, then life goes on, the permit is there,
Mhm.
right?
That's
So,
sort of what we wanted
Yeah,
in recent discussions anyway. So that might make sense to make it a two-party discussion instead of a three-party.
right.
well, that's why we're asking you guys to come here. I think it makes sense.
So why don't we, so then the question to the board is, can we approach the DEP and say that we support the permit, but we also we're gonna have we're gonna have separate negotiations with Callaway Global that will still be ongoing, but we can't have those discussions until we're able to test the scrubber
Right,
in action.
right, exactly.
Are you okay with that, Danielle? I'm kind of,
Yes,
Summarize
I'm
it.
totally fine with that. And like I said, from our standpoint right now, working with you and taking and doing sampling is not based on like, well, if your number is a certain number, we're gonna assess you. It's not that. It's just for our knowledge, just for like our own study to just understand it, because this is kind of, it's unprecedented here. And for the most part in Connecticut, there aren't a whole lot of ammonia air scrubber at all. So it's just, it helps us to understand what's happening. That's all.
now if,
And I am okay with that, to answer you.
but if we do 3 months of studies and we say, oh, the average is 25 pounds of TKN to the plant per day. And you know, we can see the TKN coming to the plant spike the day.
If it's spiked,
Then we
yes.
could say, oh, well, we will have to discuss an equitable way to surcharge when it's online, which might not be all the time. And then that would, then we would decide, like, what's a fair way to sample it, so it's representative, you know, maybe there is a 24-hour sampler for that or something, I don't know.
Well, theoretically, it appears that it won't affect the plant, theoretically, based on the data.
Sure.
And once we discharge this and if the plant doesn't see the spike, now it's not affected. By the time it gets there, it maybe goes back into, you know, with all the work.
We really don't know, you're
Yeah,
right.
we
Yeah.
really don't know that.
So let's take, you're right, so let's take it in little steps, but I also wanna make sure we don't misdirect you and say, well, these weekly samples for 3 months. They are important, and then if it does go and shows that there is an impact, then there would be a discussion, how would we maintain sampling while the air scrubber is used, and then how's the city recuperate their additional expenses for that, but we're not there yet. Let's kick that can down the road.
Yeah, and then one more point that we wanted to make today was, well, you mentioned there is increased expenses, but your normal treatment process requires aeration anyway. So I don't see what extra expense would have, because pre-step, you know, you aerate the water before you treat it. And aeration is the best way to get rid of nitrogen.
Yeah.
So you're already doing it regardless of we discharge or we don't. So we don't see you know, what extra expense the city would have regardless.
Okay, I'd like to speak to that. So we were just talking about the loadings coming into the plant. If our loadings were, let's just say, for example, half of what we're getting, we would run. This is an SBR system, sequencing batch reactor. We have the ability to conserve energy and run our blowers for less time and at less intensity, because we don't require it for nitrification. So it does matter. The more we have coming into the plant, the more we have to run these very high energy consuming blowers.
So a pair of blowers, and each one is 100 horsepower. And
No, we are not disputing that.
No, yeah.
We are saying that we are not discharging and you're still blowing that air.
it's the equivalent, it would be, so basically your nitrogen discharge is the equivalent of a couple hundred homes being added. So to say there's no impact from a couple hundred equivalent dwelling units, homes, is negligible. That's kind of counter to Danielle's report at the beginning of the month, when she's saying she's having these really high strength flow coming into the plant, and it requires quite a bit of time of aerating at that high strength. If the strength is higher, it requires more aeration time. If the strength is lower, it requires less aeration time. So it's that incremental difference that you can calculate it out based on an equivalent dwelling unit. That's the point we're trying to make.
Okay.
It's not just a wastewater flow from a say like a restaurant having weekend service. It's a little, it's more industrial.
But I think we're far from that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do the first action item. if you guys can get the scrubber up and running, I know you gotta talk to your internally with your guys, get approval. And then we on our end can notify DEP, telling them we're in the process of working out with you guys. If they can issue the permit. And if we have to modify the permit based on what we find after 3 months, I think there's only really 2 action items right now.
Well, we wouldn't modify the DEP permit. We would have a separate agreement.
Or, right, the separate agreement.
Okay.
I don't think there's any other action items for now except for these 2.
Yeah.
And then maybe myself and Matt and Danielle and Garrett or whoever else. Bill wants to be involved, we can have another meeting it down there, or have it here.
Yeah.
We have it on a Zoom call. It's up to you guys how we handle the next one.
Yeah, great.
But can you get back to us? You know, you can call, you can let Matt know when you think, what you think you're out,
What the outcome of your
the
discussion?
outcome of your discussions are. I think, Sudeep, you've got my email.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just create an email chain between you, Matt.
Yeah, and
You know,
then,
Danielle, Bill, Callaway.
okay,
And then
that's good.
we can just be on the same page, but let DEP do their thing. If we decide that we want to continue with the permitting path.
Okay, so we have one task and you have one task.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, good.
thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
I get to go sit in my chair
No, you can stay there.
All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Wastewater reclamation
Ah.
facility.
All right, Danielle. Garrett, you guys got the floor for what you handed out. Let me see, let me find it. Go ahead.
Basically, our pump stations are all prohibited 20 years. They were done at the same time as the plant, with the exception of metal art. 2006. Right now, they have a very rudimentary remember this computers from the sixties and seventies, with just like an old green screen, a little bit of writing in there. That's what we have now. It's very hard to get any data into it or out of it or make any changes. It takes you 20 minutes to get a pump offline, trying to get it online, trying to understand what you're doing. Parts are becoming non-available for this. This is where another time, this happened on a plant a couple years ago. We were on eBay trying to find parts. Just feel it's time to upgrade this system.
You believe it, was it 20 years ago? My
Almost.
gosh, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. All right, so what are you looking to do on which ones, Garrett?
Right now, it's the two bigger stations, Bridgeport Avenue and Baird Sawmill. One, I mean, they're identical other than the horsepower of the pump.
So Bridgeport Avenue and Beard Sawmill.
Yeah, we're gonna do Bridgeport Avenue first, and if you notice, it's substantially more expensive than Baird Sawmill. Because all the engineering is being done on the first one, and that'll transfer over to the second one. So the second one will be cheaper. It'll allow us to have the data back at the plant, flow data. We'll be able to remotely take a pump offline, put a pump online, change various things, allow our systems, SCADA people to be able to dial in directly from wherever they are, by calling at night at home or whatever. Whereas right now, like, all right, we done in a half hour, and you gotta wait for it to come down and.
So can you describe, I see it in here in kind of description in a nutshell, can you kind of describe, I see you're looking for SCADAs. Are there any new pumps?
No, this is just the operation of.
Just the operation
It
side?
States in the beginning, I can't remember the word I used,
State of the art system you use?
no, but I used it, I call it a controls upgrade versus a mechanical upgrade. But
Okay.
this will set us up for when the time comes and you decide you wanna add bigger pumps, we'll have the capabilities to be able to just plug into it a lot easier. So it's getting outdated, very antiquated.
So obviously you've been in touch with Aaron Associates.
These are the ones that've been here, they did the plant in the beginning, they're top shelf, they take care of it, they're actually state, on the state list for contractor work anyway.
Do we have to bid this?
No, we don't, because for that reason.
Because
They're
they're
on the
already
state
in.
contractor list, and they're already, our people.
It is such a problem getting parts now, and so much of it is obsolete, and nobody's making parts for these controls, like Garrett said, and, eBay saved us in that situation, but it's probably not gonna be an option in the future. I mean, that was just something that somebody had hanging on a shelf somewhere. And we have some, replacement parts still in our inventory from when we stocked up, when Garrett has stocked up in the past, but not everything. So if something major goes down, we're either not going to be able to get it, and we're gonna have to upgrade this stuff anyway on an emergency basis. Or, and until then, it's not on our terms, now it's on an emergency when all kinds of things could go wrong. So we're just getting to that point where it's a little bit nerve-wracking to not know if we could fix something if it goes down.
Are these hard numbers or are they budget?
No, this is the quote, this is it. That's what they'll do it for.
And what's the time frame, the duration from when we give them a contract, sign a contract and they start to work? Is it 2 months, 3 months?
It's 6 months just to get everything that they would need to,
6 months to procure all the material?
like we just said.
That's what's happening even with new stuff. The old stuff is even longer or just non-existent. That's part of what's fueling this.
And nobody keeps anything on the shelf anymore,
Hmm.
it's so expensive, and they're not gonna buy this hoping we pull the trigger.
So we sign a contract and they're gonna start the shop drawings. And the engineered system, I would assume that's only a month, and then they order parts. Is this engineered already? I can see, when I'm reading, I don't think it
Well,
is.
I mean, they kind of know what we have already, so they have an idea
All right, so then walk me through the steps. What's the steps
as far as what.
in getting this started? If we approve $60,000, what are the steps for getting, you don't just say tomorrow, here's your purchase order the material, correct? You gotta do some kind of shop drawings or some kind of, you know,
Well, they'll start from design, yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Design, yeah. But it's actually
103.
103?
Well, it's two.
Or you gonna add them both each
Different,
together?
Well,
Okay.
yeah, because they're gonna basically do them together.
Oh, I see. One's Beard Sawmill and the other's Bridgeport Ave. I got it.
And they really already have an idea of the materials they need. I mean, there is
Yeah, I
a
mean-
materials list. It's not like they've never been on site. They know our pump stations very well.
Yeah.
So they were able to go in and say, okay, well, when we, start this is approximately what we're going to need. And there is that materials list there kind of spelled out for each one.
It amazes, huh?
I know, right? Terrible.
Inflation's not going away.
So what they found is we're refurbishing old equipment,
No, it's
No.
gonna be a complete new
you said the
control.
pumps are staying,
Yeah,
they're
well,
good
for now,
for now.
but eventually,
I've been on this board for 7 years. And I've been trying to get an estimation of what it's gonna cost for a new substation on Bear Sawmill, with Matt, with Shelter Rock coming in. And I think before we piss away this kind of money, we should know what's gonna be coming down the road in the near future.
well,
And the way, and again, you guys are probably 100% right, but when I was buying equipment for replacing old equipment, I'd rather get new than replace, and you said that takes time to order this old stuff and try to find it. Why are we doing that? Why don't we go with new? I don't.
that's what we're trying to do right here. This is a
But the
whole,
pumps are still old.
That's a separate.
That's a simple.
Whole
well, they're not original. I mean, this brand new rebuild.
But I just think that we should have more of a plan of what's going on down there than.
You need to do this before you start putting in bigger pumps and doing everything else. This is more important.
All right, I don't understand that.
This is basically the controls. Of what? Controls and monitoring. Right, yeah. Right?
Yeah, right.
See, right now, we have we only monitor, we've got a guy we send daily to go take some numbers and readings and stuff, but that's putting one guy in these pump stations once a day. And you can only glean so much information by putting your eyes on something one time in a 24-hour period. And so, when there are issues, the thing is that we're expanding so much, we all know that in town, so we gotta keep up. Our pump stations are no different, the plant has its own set of requirements, but so do our pump stations, and we want to keep up on things, because if we try to do everything in all one fell swoop, it's gonna cost so much money all at once. So this is kind of like the first chunk, the first bite to take out, to get the two main, big ones taken care of, and then we can follow up. The pumps that we have running right now, we are very well set up as far as capacity on our pumps, having rebuild kits and having a replacement in kind backups, in stock. Garrett has been very instrumental in that. He's always had backup equipment, so our pumps we're set. We're never gonna have a situation at this time, or even in the next, I would say, 5 years, where a pump goes down and we go, uh-oh, we can't get a pump. Or we can't rebuild a pump and we're without a pump. That's not gonna happen. We are very well covered as far as pumping capacity. So I just wanna make that clear, that that's not as like a dire emergency at this time.
I think what he's trying to get at is just say this equipment and a whole nother development comes in and we need to get a 20 horsepower pump because we have this new development. Is this stuff able to
Oh, for
cover
sure.
it?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
That's what it kind of, he's trying to get at. It's
Absolutely.
not, oh, how much is all the whole entire system?
I got you.
You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, Don, but then you need to just spend the money to have the evaluated. And what do we need? And then put it in. That's the problem. Nobody is gonna, Matt or whoever is not gonna do 50,000 or just saying of engineering without.
Oh, I don't care, I
Yeah,
don't care, I don't understand something, I just wanna be clear about this, so I'm fine with that. You wanna do that, that's fine.
I mean, our big problem with what you're saying is that we're never gonna know when the big development's coming in. That's the
Listen,
problem with
I
it.
agree.
And you can't, and I don't want to say you can't, but it's difficult to start anticipating, well, that development's going in, well, nobody knows that. It's hard. I mean, I try to keep up with P and Z, but that's like changing all the time too. I mean, I hear one thing and then all of a sudden, 3 months later, I read something different in the newspaper. You know, so that kind of thing is hard to anticipate.
Did you seek out anybody else to get some kind of idea that they might be able to offer beyond what this Aaron Associates?
No, these are the people that we've worked with the last 20 years, designed everything, ran everything.
Isn't there like a software component has to talk to the plant as well, that Aaron Associates
Yeah.
understands better?
Hey guys, Eugene here. I have a question. In the world of like if controls, right? Like let's, we were comparing the old system that's 20 years old now and you can barely find parts for it. And it wasn't super clear on his quote. Like, are there different types of manufacturers or stuff that, I don't know if they're proposing a certain type of manufacturer versus another that we may see as a better system over the O&M of the next 25 years? Like compared to a Samsung refrigerator, you break apart on that, you might as well replace the refrigerator. Whereas another brand, if something goes wrong, it's easily fixable. Is there different manufacturers out there for stuff like this, and are some better than others?
I'm sure there is. Our whole plant is basically Allen Bradley. So this will bring it in line with all of our equipment at the plant.
So you want to sole source your PLC, which is the decision-making computer, to Allen Bradley, so there's no potential communication hiccups between the pump station and the treatment plant. But there are other components in there that there is flexibility, such as like a network hub and the backup power supply and the contactors and things like that. So there is a little bit of leeway, but based on I didn't really spend much time looking at the proposal, but it seems like they considered some of that.
Awesome.
If I were to guess, I could be totally wrong. Just a swag, you know what a swag is, right? This is probably 60 to 70% equipment and 40% labor.
Probably.
The equipment is the huge piece of a huge piece of this. So if you have 100,000, there's probably $60,000 or $70,000 worth of equipment and 40,000 worth of design and installation. So like, I agree, if you can't get away from who we have down there, Allen Bradley, you got to stay with that. So the fair question is there somebody else besides Aaron that we can go to?
Well,
I understand your reasons for not wanting to. I get that whole thing.
I'm not going down that road. If that's what you guys want to do, I'm out.
Garrett,
No,
Garrett, no,
no.
sit tight,
I'm
sit
already
tight.
going through this with the low bidder for an electrician, got nothing but crap out of them. I'm not gonna argue at this point. This is how we wanna do it. We're there every day. I'm the one that.
Okay, this is not approved.
Okay.
What am I gonna, Garrett, you're being, I get your point, but there's a fair question being asked. Okay,
I have a suggestion. Maybe this will. I hear exactly why you want to know that. Sure, you're only seeing one quote here. And I agree with Garrett for the reasons he's stating. Some of this stuff is so sensitive. Right now, we're running with only 2 people who respond to phone calls in the middle of the night that know anything about this stuff. It is difficult when you need reliability. You don't want to take a chance. However, if we are going to we've awarded Fuss and O'Neill to do some facilities planning and some studies and things like that. Maybe we could have them work on something and they have an idea of a company who could do similar work. We could get some comparable quotes, just to give the board an idea of where we're looking money wise. Truthfully, I have a suspicion that somebody else is gonna cost a lot more, but I'd like to prove that to you. And maybe we can utilize Fuss and O'Neill to get that done.
Well, you have a state list you're talking about. Who else is on the state list?
That I can't answer, I don't know that. That could do this work, I don't know that.
Well, then obviously, what I would expect, there must be someone else that's on the state list. I don't think they're exclusive.
We'll ask, we can ask Fuss O'Neill.
We can, yes. We can do that.
For now, I'll take it out of your hands, Garrett.
Okay.
If there's a question being asked, then it's gotta get answered.
I understand.
You know, I'm not telling you it's not gonna go back to Aaron. But there's a question being put on the table, so we're gonna honor the question. All right,
Fair enough.
all right, what else? Bills rendered? Weston Sampson, $13,154. I don't have a copy of that, I don't need it. You have a copy of that? Someone make
Yeah,
a motion.
propose, paying a bill, Weston and Sampson. Invoice number 6231339, the amount $13,154.
Motion by Mr. Chupley,
Second, motion.
second by Mr. Rainey. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anything else? Anybody want to make an adjournment?